Hey folks, Ora here. Hope you're all well. First thing I'd like to say before we go into the video and everything is, again, sorry for the internet problems I've been having. We have, however, managed to find where the fault lies, and hopefully that means it will be fixed sooner rather than later. But in the meantime, while the internet holds, let's get on with the video. So 9.1.5 is on us. We get it Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, depending on where you are in the world. And unfortunately for Paladins, it's bad news, I'm afraid. Bad news in the fact that there is no news, essentially. The Paladin changes we get are 4 bullet points, and only one of them is relevant. Because unfortunately, the other 3 are related to the 2 covenants that really aren't used. 2 of those bullet points are aimed at Necrolords. One of them is aimed at Nightfare. So if you were hoping for any changes, I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news. But we'll get into it. So, essentially, this is what we're looking at. Now, if we zoom in, we have all this stuff for Monk and Mage. Keep scrolling, and this is where we're at for Paladin. Yeah, it's not great. I'm not particularly impressed either, but c'est la vie. So, the change that we do get, which should be rather beneficial for us, especially for those running Tempest the Lightbringer Legendary, or actually, even if you're running Divine Toll. Because it obviously the AoE cap is being removed, so Divine Storm is no longer AoE capped. It will deal reduced damage beyond 5 targets, but it will still hit every target, which is fantastic news. What that also means is it will pump into Final Reckoning, because Final Reckoning is not AoE capped. So you can end up with that debuff on everyone, and now we can properly do some AoE damage, which is going to be good news. But unfortunately, the other 3 changes aren't as impactful. You have Vanquisher's Hammer, which is the Necrolord Covenant ability, increases the effectiveness of the Free Holy Power by Free Holy Power Spender by 25%. For those of you that don't know what Vanquisher's Hammer does, it causes your next Templar's Verdict to generate, or essentially proc, a free Divine Storm. For Retribution Paladins at least. If you're a Holy Paladin, it procs a Light of Dawn when you wog, that kind of thing. So, potentially, if you want to run around for a bit of meme stuff, you could try and line up Vanquisher's Hammer with a Templar's Verdict Imperium Power Divine Storm, and go for like a really meaty, meme, like, I am going to blow everything's face up type damage. But I don't know how effective that'd be. We might do it for some, like, memes in lower keys. Might be quite funny. Just, pull 30, 40 mobs and then just decimate them with an Imperium Power proc, Vanquisher's Hammer, the Divine Storm, Tempest Legendary, and Final Reckoning to boot while Wings is up. Actually, now I'm talking about it, I might do that. Anyway, that's an idea for another video. The Conduit, as a result, Righteous Might, is also being buffed. The damage effect is increased by 400%, and the healing effect reduced by 50%. Because the damage that you deal with Vanquish's Hammer, or the proc, I think, heals you. So, by increasing its damage and reducing its healing, it's still a buff, but it's not going to be a case of you can get yourself from 0 to 100% health just by using it. Because that would see a lot of use in PvP, and be rather broken, to be honest. Imagine a lay on hands every, minute? The Vanquisher's Hammer's off. And finally, the third thing is obviously Blessing of Seasons, as you can see here. So for those of you that don't know, Blessing of Seasons is a cycler buff that you can put on, and it will literally cycle through the 4 seasons. Spring, summer, autumn, and winter. Which is more thematic to our old vanilla roots of essentially being the party's buff groupie that follows around, throwing out Blessing of Kings, Blessing of Sack, Blessing of Salvation, Blessing of Might, and Blessing of Wisdom. I think that's all the blessings. You also had things like Divine Intervention, but that's going way back. But yeah, so I can't really see the conduit or the Covenant ability changes uprooting Divine Toll anytime soon. It's just too powerful for us. The fact that it lines up with a minute, that we've got the extra holy power generated by Divine Resonance, we've got the fact that it is perfect burst with Ringing Clarity, especially when you've got a 2/5/2 conduit with it being empowered. You're looking at almost I think it's an 80% chance for Ringing Clarity to proc at that point. So I really can't see Vanquish's Hammer taking us off top dog, and Ventia doesn't even get a mention because they weren't going to buff or change Ashen Hollow because that would have a huge impact on Holy. But anyway, so when we've discussed the changes, does that mean that we're going to see a change in the meta? No, unfortunately we're not, and a part of me is actually worried that we're actually going to see a dip in our place in the meta. It's already difficult enough to get into keys as it is, at least for higher keys. Getting up to 15s and stuff, not a problem. You're going to be perfectly fine. Don't stress. But trying to get into the 20s and the 22s, or well, 19s, 20s, 21s, and 22s, where I'm kind of looking at getting my range. Because I just have had no luck lately. And kind of that luck and lack of redundancy I'm going to discuss very, very shortly in a minute. We've not really been able to get into groups because we're being declined. And because of this reduction in the AoE cap, or the removal of the AoE cap, there are going to be other classes that are going to see more benefit. So, like, rogues, for instance, they're losing their AoE cap. And so, Assassination Rogues, Fan of Knives, Crimson Tempest, coming off AoE cap, which means the Assassination Rogues are going to be able to apply bleeds to everything. You're going to have Sub-Rogues, which are already really, really quite powerful in terms of raw DPS. They're getting 3 of their abilities removed from the AoE cap. You've got the same with Warriors. So, Whirlwind, Ravager, both for arms and protection. You've got Dreadnought, which is the overpower AoE cone. Bladestorm's been reduced, cap has been removed, so it no longer targets 8 and it just cleaves everything, which kind of horrifies me, to be honest. You've got the same with the likes of Monk, Spinning Crane Kick. I don't need to say any more on the topic. Although the Paladin change is nice and we have the removal of Divine Storm, unfortunately, where we sit in the niche, the other classes are still above us. And potentially you're going to see more broad in other ways. So, bad news, I'm afraid, and I don't want to be the harbinger of bad news, but who knows? We might do something dirty with Vanquish's Hammer that just makes people go, holy shit! Assuming there's a way to fish for Imperium power procs, which may actually see a use of Zeal. Don't know, gonna have to have a think. And Repentance, buddy, if you're watching this, please let me know what your thoughts are on this, and whether or not you could see some memeing on this, because the Discord ain't doing much. But anyway, so talking about the plans for redundancy in my solo player experience and stuff. As I'm sure you're all aware, burnout is happening across the board, and unfortunately patch 9.1.5 doesn't really fix this, because there's no real new content. Yes, the Mage Tower is coming back, and the Legion Time Walking, and the Legion Time Walking is going to be up for 2 weeks the first time it's round. Unfortunately though, what that means long term is we're only going to get the Mage Tower and Legion Time Walking. I think Stitch worked it out yesterday, that because of the rotation, and you're going to be getting it like once every 4 weeks ish, that it basically works out that the entire not every 4 weeks, there's a time walking every 4 weeks, I think. Anyway, basically the rotation puts it out that we end up with 2.8 something ish Legion time walking events per year. So the Mage Tower is only probably going to be up 2 or 3 times a year. which is kind of horrifying. Because that isn't sustainable content. Like, yes, we might get 2 weeks of being able to smash the old Legion Mythics and have a ball doing it, you know, see how high you can get. Court of Stars, fantastic example. If you can get an empowered, the melee attack bonus ring, for instance, if you're a warrior or a rogue or a demon hunter, or even a monk, actually, depending on how often you just white hit. Because it increases your attack power, I think. They changed it to increase attack power? Either which way. The ring was, people were looking forward to the ring, because you can get gear from it at 236, and I believe you can upgrade it with Valor, but you won't get anything in your chest. So you'll never get something from the Legion Mythics that is 252, but you can potentially get something that is 246. So there will be some reason to go back and do the Legion stuff, because some of the trinkets and gear that they had was bloody strong. Legion was a good time. So I'm looking forward to the 2 weeks, but it's not really a long-term solution for the patch. And with no idea on when 9.2 is going to be on the horizon, we need to put some redundancy in my playstyle and my account to kind of cover playing solo as people go and play other games and stuff. And unfortunately, what that means is a couple of things. Firstly, I have the option of alts, meta alts, so things that are really in at the moment, or rolling protection or holy for things like Mythic Plus keys. Now, obviously, as you guys know me as a Ret Paladin main, I will probably, if not definitely, be doing my Pug 15 keys as either a tank or a healer to get them done every week. But for that to happen, I'm obviously going to have to go sit in Ventir for a while, get that renown up, and bit of a grind. But we'll do it, because I need to be able to get all my weeklies done, whether that means plugging into raids or whatever else. Actually, on the topic of raid, that kind of leads us into the Zero to Hero stuff, so we'll discuss that shortly. But going back to the whole building redundancy thing, I'm kind of at a loose end at the moment in terms of playing with people. Calamity is kind of taking a break from WoW for the most part. A little bit of raid logging, maybe the odd Mythic Plus if I can tempt them. But again, this is a broad spectrum problem. Unfortunately, 9.1.5 doesn't fix it. So you are going to see content probably of me either tanking or healing keys and failing miserably, or I'll be playing alts on stream and stuff like that. So don't stress, Paladin content will still be on the horizon. As I said, we may do the Mimi Vanquish's Hammer thing, just to see how much damage it can do. But, So, Zero to Hero, and kind of the raid situation and progression in general, where are we at? Well, for those of you that have been keeping track and been with me through the journey so far, you'll know that I am progressing Sylvanas Mythic with the guild Dab for me. It's going all right. It's going to be a slow progress, I think. We've had a few roster problems. My internet problems haven't been helping the situation, and my inability to stream it hasn't been helping you guys, for those of you that have been keeping track with me. But to fill you guys in, we are making it into the first intermission. The first phase is starting to go down now. Our raid comp isn't perfect for it, so that we are having problems. Like the chains aren't dying fast enough in places, we may have too much melee, things like that. But we're getting there. So what does that mean for 9.1.5? Well, 9.1.5 and the changes that it allows, so covenant swapping here and there, we may see a little bit more of a uptake in certain in certain damage profiles. Or we may see people swapping to and from covenants to try out whether or not, say, Nightfare Warrior, the Aftershocks is more beneficial than using, say, Spear or Bastion. Purely because of the fact that you can hit more. Like, you can hit in a straight line and potentially position yourself so that if Sylvanas is near some arrows, you can just Aftershock straight through and hit everything. rather than Spear of Bastion, which has a rather low AoE point. Alternatively, because of the more old-friendly changes to the patch, not many, but there's some, in terms of leveling speed through Threads of Fate, being able to skip them more, and leveling through Torghast if need be. Not the most efficient way to level Torghast, but it's an option for those that love it. It may see the chain, or may allow for some change within the roster to a more beneficial setting. So, for instance, if I swap to Venthir, for instance, I could potentially go sit in the tank spot as the damage tank, because I've got the gear for it. And we could have our current tank play his Boomkin, which potentially allows us to have an extra Boomkin within Phase 1. Now, how that might impact Phase 2, Phase 3, we don't know. We haven't got that yet. But having the extra Boomy for the transition, when all the arrows are out, would be massively beneficial. Alternatively, I could go healer. Similar situation, we have another Ashen Hollow. We will see. But the plans for 9.1.5, as things stand for me personally, will be to level the level/gear the other melee DPS roles. So I'll be doing warrior, monk, death knight, in that order, with warrior and monk taking priority, then my death knight, who is currently level 50. I do have a level 61, but I don't have the gold or the money to transfer him, so another leveling jobby. Yippee! Same with the monk, but and we'll be getting them to a position where they could, in theory, step in for my paladin if need be. Not great. Not something I was planning to do. We did obviously have the warlock, but the warlock hasn't been needed or touched in a long time. It was kind of a wasted leveling experience, honestly. And I'll be honest, swapping from melee to ranged DPS roles, although I can play warlock at a reasonable level, probably isn't the best if I want to push into higher guilds. Which kind of brings us on to the plans for 9.2. 9.2 is a long way off yet. There's not even been an announcement of the PTR yet, and so we've got no Scooby what's happening. And this kind of hinges on how my guild reacts, because we will get Sylvanas down before 9.2 comes out. That is, I think at this point it's fairly guaranteed unless the guild pretty much quits the game. Which I don't really think is going to happen. I think we're relatively stable. But the concern is, what happens after Sylvanas goes down? If Sylvanas goes down and the guild continues to do re-clears and things like that, and we're kind of progressing at a nice rate and getting logs and gearing other characters and whatever else, then things are going to be good. We're going to be alright and I don't need to worry too much. However, if the guild does crash, die, or whatever else, and I have to go into more of a solo thing, again, kind of for my mythic boss kills and stuff like that, try and get the gear, the transmog, and other bits and pieces that I want, then we may need to look at finding a new guild. I don't particularly... Well, I do and I don't. I kind of want to find a new guild, because obviously the Zero to Hero Challenge, I want to make my way up the rankings. Once I get my first cutting edge, I want to then try and get myself into a position where we can do it faster, and I can slowly make my way into top 50, top 100, top 50, top 10 guild. That's the end goal. But at the same time, I don't want to leave these guys, because for the most part, a lot of the people in depth me I actually like. They're a decent bunch. Few hiccups here and there, but that could be caused by multiple reasons. So the plan for 9.2 is prep to make my character roster, the roster that I can bring to a party, as attractive as possible, just in case. So that means having, like, obviously I'm still going to be a Ret Paladin main, unless of course that changes and you guys want to start seeing other content, where any of the melee DPS, then I might be able to flex a little bit more in terms of how I apply to those guilds if the need arises. But as a Retribution Paladin main, I need to make sure that the alt or alts that I am bringing to the table, because obviously the higher up you go in terms of guild rankings, the more classes they expect you to be able to play at a high caliber. Then, so with that fact in mind, the more attractive I can make my account and say, look, yes, I'm a Ret Paladin main, but I can also play Warrior, Monk, Demon Hunter, and I can kind of play Death Knight to this level. Means that potentially, although my Ret Paladin might not be fantastic, I could end up seeing myself bouncing from, okay, right, we need a Warrior for this because we need Rally and we need your Spell Reflect for this boss, or we need your Monk because we need a buff. So things like that. So we'll be doing that. And hopefully you guys will join me for the ride there. Which it does mean that if you guys want to see any content on alt classes, then I would greatly appreciate your feedback, and I can do that during the 9.1.5 stuff. Whether it be raid pushing as an arms warrior, or flipping mythic pluses as a monk, whatever. I don't mind. The journey for Zero to Hero is to be done with you guys, and hopefully you will join me on that journey. So, the summary in conclusion then, because I appreciate that this has been a longer video than my previous ones of late, and I am conscious of internet crashing on me at any moment. Paladin Changes, not a whole hell of a lot to say, to be honest. The TLDR is Divine Storm is no longer AoE capped. That should see some use in fortified weeks and lower keys. It'll allow us to be a little bit more aggy. Does mean we will have more aggro problems though, especially when we go to burst. But as paladins, we should kind of be used to dealing with aggro problems. We've had 2 Covenant buffs in Necrolord and Nightfey, but they still probably won't touch on Kyrian, unfortunately. Although Necrolord does have some edgy meme lord potential, if you want to go down that route. And we will science it for you, so you don't have to. The 9.1.5 channel updates. Basically, we're going to be leveling and gearing all the other melee DPS that are deemed relevant. Probably won't be touching on Rogue and Demon Hunter until the very, very end, if we get time or if they're even needed, primarily because of the fact that rogues are literally just pure damage. They don't, at the moment at least, they don't really bring a lot in utility. Yes, you have Cloak, but things like Cloak and Shadow and stuff, there's not something that has been specifically added to be right, okay, we need someone to soak this and it's magic damage. Because once you start getting those kind of things, then you end up in a situation where rogues become useful. The damage themselves, although good, doesn't necessarily combat or change anything that I have on my Ret Paladin. Because in terms of damage for damage, well, I could just get better at doing damage on my Ret Paladin than my Rogue. And going into potentially what could be 9.2, wherever that is long term, we're going to make it so that my character roster that I can bring to a guild or to the table is as attractive as possible. So yeah, bit of a long spiel. Thank you very much for staying through this, if you have, or if you've just jumped to the TLDR. I hope you've enjoyed that too. And I will catch you all in the next one. But before I go, please do comment below if there's anything you'd like to see in 9.1.5 or any questions you have of me. But in the meantime, folks, take care and have a good one.